Good afternoon, evening, night, whenever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. It is me, Omar from Hardware. And again, we just want to emphasize on YouTube and Spotify, we're going through our rebrand. Did some thinking on the TikTok and Instagram. We're at Hardware Pod. So it had to change the name a bit from Hardware to or from Between the Stripes Podcast Network to Hardware, just for visibility purposes. But I'm back on the podcast with a guest, with a winner of the encompassing sweepstakes earlier in the week with my mini documentary about the PBS game of the week in Penn and Dartmouth. I'm joined by David Brown of NCAA Football Zone, and he has two podcasts, Twins Talk It Up, which you can see in the background, and the name of the other one escapes me. But David, thank you for coming on.
It's a pleasure, Omar. Thank you for having me. Just two college football fans enjoying conversations around the sport that we love. So it's a pleasure to be here with you, and I look forward to having this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a big fan of your commentary on Twitter. We've interacted a couple times here and there. I think we talked about Howard a couple times because Howard is definitely one of my rooting interests in HBCU college football. Not just because you're on there, but just because I always gravitate towards like the academic schools that really have like a tougher, like a more of an uphill battle when it comes to college sports. But yeah, so excited to talk this up. We're going to talk about various HBCU classics. I got my 2021 Ski Morehouse Classic shirt on, which I attended Legion Field, and I'm just excited to get this started. So it's kind of a slow time in college football, aside from conference realignment, but more so Black college football. It's kind of a slow time as the tournaments are happening. Um, and out of the MEAC, of course, MEAC has their tournament in Norfolk. The SWAC, I think, is in Birmingham. But there's been some kind of chatter, especially with the recent CAA television contract extension about Hampton and North Carolina A&T possibly rejoining the MEAC. The idea of that, many HBCU accounts that I follow and respect have kind of discussed that. So I want to know your thoughts on that, David.
I love that, Omar. It's a great question. I would really lean more towards the athletic directors, what they're looking at, what they're thinking, the presidents of the universities. I personally would love to see the MEAC expand. I would love to see it grow. And why wouldn't you want your old rivals to come back? Why wouldn't you want to see Hampton, North Carolina A&T come back to the MEAC? An incredibly rich tradition of football. We take care of our universities. We understand what the platform is for the athletes that we support and for the students that we bring on. And so you even had the AD for South Carolina State University, Keisha Campbell, mention she kind of hinted at why not come back, Pirates? Why not? So we would love to see them come back. I really think there's no better place for these universities than the MEAC. But at the same time, I understand that they've got their plans, their ideas, what they want to do. I want to see the conference expand. I think it would add more depth to what we're trying to build. I understand we're a unique conference. We're definitely more inclined on the academic side of it, and we will lean that direction. But there's no place like the MEAC. And so, yes, come back. We would love to have you. I don't see it happening, but I would love to have them back.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see it happening either, but I think the CAA television contract it seems lucrative if even if the exposure is not there on Flow Sports, which has become the butt of several jokes among college football fans like ourselves. But I think something that's like interesting for me, it's like I think it's more attractive to go back to the MEAC now that Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M are out because it's a more geographically condensed conference now. So that's something I think about too, where it's like, what if Hampton and NC what if they just waited it out before Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman left? That's something I often think of too. So it's like it's more attractive now, and of course, I'm not sure though. Like, I'm not sure where to find these contracts, but I want to know like I guess the payout for the Celebration Bowl and like how that would relate to the I guess with added media exposure, how that relates to the CAA's contract with Flow Sports and CBS Sports Network. Because it's great and all CBS Sports Network and everything, but it's like you think about the barriers to entry that exist with CBS Sports Network, of course, like cable providers, which
Yep.
cable is on the decline, and then YouTube TV and I think or Hulu Live TV are like the only two options to get CBS Sports Network, and that's like upwards of $60 a month. So on the end of the CAA. Like that's great and all that they have an
Yeah.
extensive contract with CBS Sports Network, but again, like the exposure isn't great compared to like having games on ESPN Plus in the MEAC. So that is something I think about. I kind of went on a tangent there, but yeah, like what if Florida A&M and Bethune Cookman didn't leave?
Well, I agree with you that there's some thought that goes into what if these things didn't happen. It's unfortunate that what's being driven right now to me is not healthy for the sport that we love in college football. It's not the same. But with streaming becoming more of a presence, and we're talking about the Pac-12 conference and looking at Amazon and Apple, I can see the MEAC or I can see the SWAC making an appeal to a different type of streaming platform to say, hey, come look at our games, look at our attendance. For example, look at the Celebration Bowl and versus what happened with the bowl game between I think it was Pitt and I can't remember who they played in the same stadium, in the same bowl there, the Mercedes Benz there and Atlanta, and they had more fans, right? So the potential's there. The opportunity to highlight our universities are there. We just need to expand our thought and our exposure and look at opportunities that are out there and say, hey, can we leverage a better contract? Can we leverage better deals so that we can highlight our teams?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and I think something that I love that's emerged recently is the HBCU Go game, where it's not only streamed but it's syndicated as well, which I do believe syndication is I wouldn't say it's on its way back, but I think it's definitely a better model nowadays than the cable model.
Yep.
Um, especially now, like you look at the events that are coming on, like the CW, you have Live Golf, which I wrote about a
Hmm.
couple weeks with like the ratings, and then you have the Cincinnati, the prospective Cincinnati Chili Bowl, where their TV partner is CW Sports, so maybe a partnership like that because there are markets, there are markets like you
Yep.
have Philadelphia with Delaware State, you have or Philadelphia and the whole state this whole state of Delaware, you have the Baltimore, the DMV market with Howard and Morgan State, got a couple Carolina markets with North Carolina Central and South Carolina State. So if you set up like a network of maybe like CW stations like the SWAC has
Hmm.
done with HBCU Go, the MEAC becomes definitely a more attractive option for than say, and I'm going to bring in Tennessee State. Honestly, Tennessee State, I'm surprised they're not in MEAC talks because,
They are. They are.
oh, they are okay. They are. I haven't heard anything.
Hey, I'll tell you, there's something about, and by the way, I love that you mentioned HBCU Go, and it's I would put this out there for all of your listeners. Make sure you're going to downloading the app, follow it, make sure you're staying tied into it because I'm able to watch games that I typically would not be able to watch because I'm in the Washington D.C. metro area, and so I love that option. But I will say this: from my perspective, silence does not mean that there's no action going on in the background. I believe without a doubt that our commissioner is working hard, that she's looking at opportunities for growth. She's looking at where can we expand as a conference, what can we do differently, what can we go after, and so Commissioner Stills is thinking outside the box. And I've got to believe that even though it's been a stage of silence, so to speak, the Pac 12 is doing the same thing, right? It's not their style to put everything out there on media. And I know we want attention, we want to know what's going on. I believe their calls have been made to TSU. I believe that there's been entertaining thoughts around even expanding beyond our initial footprint in the MEAC, and maybe we're looking at a couple PWIs. Maybe we're looking at VSU because they're probably the only Virginia State university that could possibly make that jump from a financial perspective. But I do believe that the calls have been made, or at least it's the fillers have been put out there, because we would love to see TSU be brought into the MEAC because I believe this is the best place for them.
Yeah, I agree, and especially now with the Big South OVC alliance in football, like I can't really speak as much in basketball, which like in basketball, like the OVC used to be a great conference to be in with Belmont and Murray State, but they're long gone and it's now back
Yeah,
to being like
yeah,
a one bid conference. But yeah, like in football, especially like if you think about fans, like how interesting is it? And like I don't say this to particularly roast the area because I spent 10 years in New England myself, but it's like how much do Tennessee State fans want to go play Bryant? Want to go travel to Smithfield to Bryant or I can't say the same about Robert Morris. That's near Pittsburgh. So I mean it's kind of a bigger city, but even then it's like Robert Morris. Like there's no tradition there in those matchups.
no,
There's
none.
no yeah there's no like I'd say I guess there's no brand not really brand. whatever the word is. It's like that. It's not there in the Big South
Yeah.
OVC alliance with a lot of those matchups. So, and of course too, the Celebration Bowl, the pathway to Celebration Bowl, and the TV exposure and the media exposure is way bigger.
Yeah, it's huge. There's nothing like the Celebration Bowl. But if I could add this, Omar, what's interesting for me when you think about the conferences and what we're talking about, expansion, growth, and what's going to happen with the Big South and these alliances being made, it's just to try to keep them alive. I mean, the reality is when people thought about the MEAC losing Florida A&M, losing Bethune-Cookman. Oh, the conference is going to fold. No, we did not fold. We're here. We're solid. We're going to grow, and I believe without a doubt we are going to expand. And you're probably going to hear some news about it sometime very very soon. But I think that conferences like the Big South, and you got Brian on an island. I mean, who's going to Rhode Island? They're on an island. Robert Morris. I love the idea of saying let's think outside the box. But you can't just say let's have these alliances. But Hampton, North Carolina A&T, they had this thought we want to go up a level of competition. We want to move up to the FBS. And so I think a lot of what's driving them to do that is why they joined CAA. But in reality, they could have stayed here and done that. I just think that there can't be these kind of what I call short-term thinking about where you want to go, but you got to think differently. So we'll see where those alliances go. I really still believe that there may be an opportunity to bring in a couple other schools to the MEAC to strengthen what we're building. I mean, who knows? Chicago State may come back to the table. We said no for now. We pushed the pause button, but they want to bring football in. They're doing an exploratory, review of um, is it viable? Can it be sustainable? Should we bring football into the fold? And if they do that, they'll be more attractive to other conferences. And I think they might be attracted to Howard and the fellow MEAC programs as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I would agree. I would agree too. Chicago State is very fascinating. I do hope they find their footing, somewhere in a conference,
Yeah.
eventually. But yeah, the Chicago State football exploratory study makes a lot of sense too. The thing is though, it's like for an institution like Chicago State with all of its financial woes and all of its
Yeah.
instability, I think the Pioneer Football League is probably the best option at the moment, where you have students paying money to play Division 1 football and
Hmm.
everything. And like, who knows, playing in the PFL, you might end up playing against the FBS team like Valpo this year. A game that I was at and and very excited for until after like the first quarter.
Yeah. The Pioneer is an interesting option, Omar. You're right. I just feel like the Pioneer League for the schools there that don't have the same type of structure with scholarships for their athletes might be a great place to start. It's just such a huge footprint. Come on, you talk about flying to San Diego to play once a year, right? It's such a huge footprint as a league, but it could be a great step for them to say, let's get into this. Arena playing football again, or at least playing football and see where that goes. But we'll see. I mean, it's an option. The MEAC may be revisited again. Because of the market. Howard played there last year. I love the market. I just love being in the Chicago area, and I think why not bring them back in the table maybe a couple years from now or a year from now.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And like the thing too, yeah, the PFL, the footprint is huge, for sure. But I mean, I guess why not bring back divisions? Like sure you have the San Diego game like once a year, but Chicago State brings so much potential, especially like
They do.
it's like a lot of moving pieces. Like you got me, with an idea now for writing later on in the future, but with like so many moving pieces, like with RSNs, it's like who says WGN, Marquee, or yeah, I guess Marquee, not WGN, but Marquee Sports Network, Comcast Chicago, who says they can't broadcast a couple Chicago State PFL games, some like live sports? Because if you ask me what airs on RSN aside from MLB, NHL, or like
Yeah.
NBA, I couldn't answer. I'd say maybe pregame shows, and that's it. So definitely something fascinating there. As we transition to our next topic, the MEAC SWAC Challenge, they've put out their matchups during this offseason up until 2026. When I was stationed in Georgia, I went to the game. I went to the return of the classic, when it was Alcorn State, NC Central, and it was a very very good atmosphere. I'm a big fan of that. I just like that field, Center Park Stadium out in
Yeah.
Atlanta. But
Yeah.
yeah, they released
I
their
love it.
matchups. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's great. It's great. I know Howard played last year in
Yeah, we
it, so
struggled a little bit here. I didn't think we were going to lose that game, but once we got our footing, you saw that Howard was able to be competitive. Howard ended up being co-champions of the conference with North Carolina Central, the eventual champion of the Celebration Bowl, taking Coach Prime and giving him a good, goodbye gift over there to Colorado. But I would love to see more exposure. I know there have been a couple programs that have yet to play in that classic, and yet right now we know that brand drives a lot of this. And so while you might see the common names, and of course Howard's going back again to play A&M in 2026, Alabama A&M in 2026. It'd be great to be able to see more of a rotation. I love to be able to see Delaware State in that. My son is a student at Delaware State. I would love to be able to see Morgan State go down there, and so hopefully we'll see more of a rotation with these programs so that more of their fan base can get down there as well.
Yeah, I agree. And so for me, the one thing is like with Morgan State has never appeared in it. And of course they've struggled ever since, honestly. It feels like ever since Earl Banks left, they've struggled. But for me, I feel like the MEAC is taking like they're like miss the MEAC SWAC challenge is missing such an opportunity to have
Yeah.
a Morgan State Grambling uh MEAC SWAC challenge, like because the tradition is there, and it's like, and the thing is
Mm,
too, it's not the older generation that you need to attract to HBCUs. It's a younger generation.
yeah.
So I think that is the one obstacle that's in the way, but it's like why not reintroduce this rivalry, this because it's like, for me, I think in my eyes as an Army fan, Morgan State Grambling is the Notre Dame Army of Black college football. That's part of the reason why, like, just hearing the lore, that's part of the reason that grew my Army fandom as a kid
Yeah.
growing up.
Nice.
Hearing about Mr. Inside, Mr. Outside, Yankee Stadium and Notre
Mm.
Dame, win one for the Gipper and everything, all those moments at Yankee Stadium, grew my fandom and everything. And it's like, why not do that for the next generation? Talk about,
Oh
Doug Williams playing
man.
at Yankee State, or not Doug, yeah, Doug Williams, Shaq Harris, and then Raymond Chester for Morgan State and everything. Like, why not like bring back those names in a Grambling Morgan State MEAC SWAC
That would be
challenge?
awesome. We got to do it. We have to do it. And I think it's just a matter of getting the commissioners to sit down and have that conversation. But I'm going to throw out an idea, Omar, just when we talk about the expansion of more classics, talk about more games that could be scheduled, and we talk about these schools like a Morgan State that may not have had an opportunity to play in this, the games that what we call matter in the beginning of the season. Like, we're going to look at the Howard and Alabama A&M game in a couple of years. I'm going to be there, right? We all want to be there, but why not consider? There's an idea that I want to throw out there that I had mentioned on a different podcast platform, on a different situation on Twitter, that a friend of ours, perhaps you may have heard this dialogue that he had before, but Darian Gray, he's kind of the host of the podcast Mouth of the South. He mentioned this before, and we see this what we call the like MEAC SWAC challenge. Different conferences do it every year. They do it more in basketball, and I would like to see it in basketball and in football for the MEAC and SWAC. Why can't we see the top eight well, actually top eight schools from the previous season in basketball play the MEAC schools? Why can't we see maybe the top four teams from the previous season of football play the top four previous season football, the MEAC versus SWAC at the beginning of the year outside of the classics, right? I think it might be a great way to continue to grow the exposure, to grow the game that we love, to grow the opportunities to bring these incredible institutions together and say, hey, let's have more of this. Let's do more of this every single year. And we can even rotate the cities. It would be a blast to be able to see this done.
Yeah, I agree. Just full down the line. I mean, it's a little bit hard in terms of like numbers wise with the SWAC and MEAC, of course, but it's like why not have like the top six SWAC teams like
Yep.
play, the six MEAC schools, just down the line for football. It's harder to do in football, but basketball, it makes a ton of sense too. Uh, excuse me, and yeah, like you said, like a bunch of cities too, like can be like we can have like maybe like three schools or like yeah, three matchups in like one city, three matchups in another in like a multi-team event because I know multi-team events actually it would have to be divided even more because I think multi-team events are like four, I think four
Yeah,
max
yeah,
you know, college basketball. But I think that's something fascinating to explore, especially too in this day and age where like conferences are trying to try new things in terms of like boosting their RPI, getting those units like not just for like a school like the big one is like the Conference USA in the WAC.
yeah,
Excuse me, that's the big one that's emerging in terms of mid majors. But it's like why not do that for the MEAC and SWAC where it's like instead of playing these paycheck games that like hurt that are necessary but hurt your RPI immensely, why not play these games like get some
yeah,
non-conference ones under your belt? And we're seeing like more sponsors emerge and more of these like basketball classics emerge. I know there's like the one at the Prudential Center and like there is of course the All-Star game, the one that follows the All-Star game
yep.
classic. So
Yep.
we're
I
seeing
mean,
and Chris
you got to
Paul
think
too.
about it. Right. Michael B. Jordan's getting involved, and he's got
Yep.
the HBCU Classic there at Prudential. I mean, the rise is there. I mean, Chris Paul graduating from Winston-Salem State. I mean, the attention's starting to grow. I love that we have these classics. I would love to see more exposure to some of the schools that we don't often see. Maybe it would help if they got more involved in some of these classes, but why not? Let's expose it. Let's keep growing it. I love the idea, and I love that we're talking about this.
Yeah, 100% too. And I mean, just before we close the book on this, I mean, thoughts on Texas Southern? Like, is there? I mean, Texas Southern, they're the others. They're the one SWAC school, and the other schools, along with Morgan State, that have never appeared in the MEAC SWAC Challenge. Uh,
Oh gosh.
your thoughts about getting them in there? Like some year, I know they've struggled recently, but they had the win against Southern this year, like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
dominant win against Southern. So there's the improvements there.
Yeah. Well, people give the MEAC a lot of flack because we're a quote unquote basketball conference. And yes, we are a very strong basketball conference. And when you went into the tournament this year, you easily could have seen one of five teams winning this. But I will say this for Texas Southern, I would literally lean on Dr. Kenyatta Cavill on this because he's the expert. I mean, he teaches it there. He's got his own podcast. He's a voice that we do literally every week. We have this HBCU conversation, on Wednesday nights and sometimes on Friday nights, and he lends his thoughts, and he would probably be the voice to be able to share why Texas Southern hasn't been and what they could bring to that. But I will say this: they got a chance to win their conference in basketball, and I love to be able to see them be able to come up to that platform, to that stage, and maybe we see them match up with Delaware State or see them match up with a Morgan State. That would be fun to be able to do.
Yeah, knock out two birds with one stone. And talking about Texas Southern basketball, like they've long had a great pedigree in the SWAC. Even funny story, even my co-host Jackson, who is a huge Florida fan, like a lot, I think his dad and grandfather both went to Florida. He's not a college basketball guy, but the year that Texas Southern beat Florida, he sure was even that got him mad. Like he does not care about college basketball. He's like Texas Southern. Like we lost to Texas Southern as a Florida fan. So you know, just want to make note of that there.
Hey, coaching matters. I mean, I'll say that we can ever get into this spill about NIL and what's drawing some incredible talent at these big schools, but coaching matters. And you get the right heart, these kids, you get the right mindset, and they could do it. I mean, you look at Texas Southern, they're not afraid to play anybody. They will play anybody on their schedule. It does not matter for them. And so I think seeing them have an upset like that, I think you got to expect it. Norfolk State now, they've been in a big dance. They've won the MEAC the last couple of years. To me, that's not a question of can they compete, can they play against the best in the country. But I think that you got to watch out for some of these schools because they might show up, and all you need is one day to be off, one day to have more turnovers, one day to not be in sync when it talks about chemistry on your team, and yet you play an HBCU program and they're on. Yeah, that could be a danger.
Yeah, I mean, I agree exactly. I'll take this one game, you know, with these schools, you know. So I mean, we've seen Texas Southern do like multiple times, like multiple. I think they beat Oregon too a couple years
Yep.
ago as well.
Yep.
So yeah, so I mean, yeah, I love it. So it's like love hate for me. You know, I love seeing them play these schools all the time, but it's like it does damage to their RPI, which
I know it
hurts.
does. I know, which is hard because I agree with you. We got to look at scheduling the right games that's going to benefit us, not looking at the quote unquote paycheck games. Coach Prime made it very clear that some of these games make no sense for us. And yet we still do it. Maybe for the exposure, but we're not really getting paid the way we should. And you don't want to go get beat up. right? And the truth of the matter is, we don't have the same depth of resources and finances, and we're not structured in a way to be able to compete like that consistently.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think the right games is definitely like I guess the best philosophy, and even that comes with like travel being factored in because I think I'm not sure if it was Coppin State. I think it was Coppin State that took like the road trip pretty much from hell that like I think SI covered, where it was just absolutely insane, like the amount of days it was, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it was all by bus too and everything. So I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I know, no, I'm not adding much by like just agreeing, but I just yeah, um, you may make a really great point. Going on to our next topic, this one is one that I love a lot. Like I think college football, like the heart of college football. Call me in an old spirit, but bowl games are in the heart of college football and everything.
Yes. Yes.
And with the 12-team playoff, we're straying away from the heart of college football. It came to be, this came to me. I've been thinking about this a lot because it all started with the Holiday Bowl moving to Petco Park, and I'm a huge fan of football, baseball stadiums. And I was like, man, I really don't want to pay for a flight, but if I convince my family when I go up to Albuquerque for Christmas, if I convince my family, hey, let's go to San Diego for Christmas vacation for a couple days, surely they'll love it. So and they did. And then it just occurred to me, just making this trip with my family, watching the game with my mom and brother, I'm like, this is what college football is all about, just like people having an excuse to take a vacation and watch just
Yes.
good football. Like we watched the Holiday Bowl and we watched the Arizona Bowl. Both one score games. Like I mean I couldn't believe how much God blessed me this bowl season because the four bowls that I did see, the New Mexico Bowl, the Arizona Bowl, Holiday Bowl, and the Cotton Bowl, all like probably the four best
Wow.
finishes. Probably the four best finishes in all of bowl season. Every single one was a great bowl game. But bowl games are in the heart of college football, and I'm afraid
Yeah.
we're losing that. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I don't know if you have a point before I make my big discussion point.
No, no, go for it. I'm excited to see where you're going. I'm actually flowing with
Oh,
you here. I love it.
so with this, I think there's definitely room for one or two more bowls to create kind of like a black college football bowl series where it's like I mean, yes, we have like the Black College Football Championship, the Celebration Bowl, but even then, there's like controversy with the polls from year to year. I know last year when South Carolina State won the Celebration Bowl, there was like talk of Florida A&M sliding up and being the wire champion, the media champion of Black College football. So if we do a bowl series, I think there's plenty of cities in the South that either don't have a bowl game or have a stadium that's just laying around and like kind of needs events to, bring things into the area and like keep it alive. I think there's definite room for maybe one more bowl in the FCS level and another bowl in the CIAA and SEAC. I want to know your thoughts on that.
I love it, and I agree with you. I think there's been talk in our circles about expanding the bowl games. However, I want to put out a caveat here. There's a reason why we have the Celebration Bowl. There's a reason why everything accumulates to that one point in the season, and you don't want to devalue that. You don't want to take away from that. You want that to still be the highlight of the college football season. But I can see adding a couple more bowl games. I can see expanding if you want to say, hey, we're not really digging the FCS playoffs and we got to pay for exposure. We got to go ahead and put a bid in to host a game. And what if we don't really get situated to with the best matchups. And so it's really not been in the best interest of HBCUs to really get involved in the playoffs. And yet you have the one unique year where you have Jackson State winning the SWAC. And yet what do we do? FAMU wants to go play, they go play. But you can solve that with adding more bowl games. You could solve that with maybe another game or two. And I would even say, why not go to the Bahamas, right? You have an HBCU there. Why not go to the Bahamas and say, hey, we're going to have this as a great destination vacation spot. Who wouldn't want to be there? You could get two incredible teams. You could have gotten a TSU versus a FAMU there. You could have gotten a North Carolina A&T, versus another program there, and it would have been a blast. The other thought could be that if you wanted to expand this and say, hey, we could do two more games and make it a four-team playoff, you could do that as well. I love the idea of thinking outside the box, but I would personally add a destination. why not go to the Bahamas? Why not go somewhere where it would be a great vacation spot, a good getaway, and we can support the HBCU that's there, right? Let's support the ability to send our students and give them exposure outside even of the continental US. But I also agree that there are cities in the South that could host a game that would be perfect fits. Now, I'm personally got a lot of family. I have a lot of family in Texas. So I wouldn't mind another Texas, a bowl in Texas, or a bowl maybe near New Orleans. And but why not? I love the idea, but keep the focus on the Celebration Bowl. Make sure that's what is exposed to the students, that they understand the financial impact of it. They understand that the exposure that's going to come with that, the recruiting that comes from that is huge. So if we can make that the ultimate focus, great. Let's keep adding that with the mindset of one or two more games, but that's got to be the focus of the accumulation of the city, the Celebration Bowl.
So I agree. So like I have this like in my head, and I think it's the Virgin Islands that has the HBCU, the U.S.
Yep,
Virgin Islands. They had the basketball tournament there, and I've
that's
written
true.
about a classic, with one of the Florida schools, or at least moving the Edward Waters and Florida Memorial game to the U.S. Virgin Islands. I mean, it makes a lot of sense there. And I think I'll put that in a link, or either in a card or in the bio for that article if anyone wants to see my proposal. But I love the idea. I love destination bowl games. The Bahamas Bowl is a bucket list game for me. Um, I think for me, the two cities that come to mind. So when you mentioned Celebration Bowl being the culminating event, I think we can keep that. And I think there's open space in the schedule. You have Army Navy. You have Army Navy week where there's not much
That's
college
true.
football being played. If you bookend those games around the Army Navy game, have one at noon Eastern time, and then have another one be like the nightcap, the last kind of college football game of the regular season. Not really, but like kind of like in the same vein.
Mm.
Because I mean, I also did some research on TV ratings for the NBA. I know the NBA like started their Saturday night games, and the ratings didn't really do well on the second Saturday of December, almost said September, of December on ABC. So it's almost like, if you air football, America's a football loving country, especially
Yeah, it
college
is.
football. Like I think it would do well if you air that instead of the NBA. For me, like two cities that stand out I think are Birmingham, Alabama, because of Legion Field. I know Legion Field's try to get the SWAC Classic off the ground for the past 2 years, and they failed both years. First with Jackson State and Arkansas Pine Bluff, and then
Yeah.
this year it was like Jackson State Southern, the Boombox Classic that again fell through. So it seems like they're never going to get this thing off the ground. So why not have a bowl game at Legion Field? As much as people love to hate on Legion Field, it has, if the city of Birmingham is willing to foot the bill, which it seems like they are, and it's a no loss thing. Like, why not have this game on the second Saturday of December at Legion Field with like the second place MEAC team, the runner up in the SWAC. Then another city that comes to mind, maybe for like a SEAC, CIAA game, is like Charleston, South Carolina.
Mm.
Like that's a city that's tried to have a bowl before. Kind of a good, kind of I wouldn't say it's a great vacation spot, but again, it's like there's a lot more. It's a lot worse, a lot of bad places you can be aside from Charleston, South Carolina on the second Saturday of December.
Hey, that's a beautiful city, man. I'll tell you, it's beautiful over there, and I would love to go down there. I think that it might make more sense to keep it in North Carolina, Raleigh, Charlotte area if you were going to do that. But hey, I would be game for it. I would love to go to Charleston, South Carolina for a game like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, it's like, and then yeah, just like look for like these cities that don't have bowls. For me, Little Rock, Arkansas was like one, but like that's kind of a stretch too. I mean, Little Rock, Arkansas, they have the JUCO national
Yep.
title anyway. Excuse me, they got the JUCO national title anyway, so it's like already kind of a bowl in the first place. But yeah, that's just my thinking right there. Like if we just get these cities that don't have bowl games and just use that second Saturday of December when there's just not much football on, and it's like, hey, like if you lost the SWAC championship, like here's your, this is a consolation prize. It's almost like I am a sucker for history, as a lot of people know. It's almost like the playoff bowl, like the old NFL playoff bowl where where like the runners up in each what do you call it, each conference played in the
Yep.
playoff ball. And then Vince Lombardi famously called it. I think he called it before I cursed for no reason. Well, let me find the quote because I do believe he Vince because I don't like to curse only when I'm quoting people, but I believe he had some choice words for the playoff bowl and he called it once. Oh yeah, so to his players, Lombardi called the playoff bowl the quote unquote shit bowl, a loser's bowl for
Oh,
losers. So excuse my language, but yeah, so just bring back kind of like the aspect of the old playoff bowl, but it's like it's a college game, it's not a
yeah,
consolation prize.
I agree. I love that. I love that idea. I would welcome that in a heartbeat. And plus, I think for a lot of us who are college football fans, we want to do the travel. We want to be able to plan it out. And like you can say, hey, we want to go to San Diego. We have family there. And I tell my wife, hey, we got to go down and visit, so and so. And on the way, we're going to go to the game in Atlanta, or on the way, we're going to go to the game in Charlotte. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think why not make it a destination game, whether you're talking about the second weekend of September, and it could be a great way to kind of enjoy the college football scene. Why not do it?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, if it's a manageable trip for fan bases, which the locations we both proposed are, then why not? Even another one like St. Louis looks like definitely like a good one. If you get the right management group in St. Louis, because I know last year
Yes.
I wanted to go to the Pine Bluff game in St. Louis, but that was just I just can't believe the mismanagement with that one. That was just wild. Just a wild story with the mismanagement there. But it's like I've always wondered why St. Louis doesn't have a bowl game themselves. Like they
Yeah.
have an NFL stadium, um, and it's like
Well,
it's rarely being
that's the
used.
XFL now, right? That's the XFL
Yeah, it's
using it.
actually the stadium, and they're filling it. They're filling it. So I bring a lot of respect for the Battlehawks fan base. They're filling that
Yeah.
stadium, but even like yeah, even St. Louis too. As a bowl game, like you get the right city. I'm sure like they would foot the bill too, because football season it's kind of dead there. Like
Yeah.
who's playing there. So yeah, just a great opportunity for a lot of games to be held or a lot of games
Yeah.
to be added. So that's all I had scheduled, David. Do you have anything else to add with our discussion? Any shameless plugs? Even though a shameless plug is never shameless, in my opinion.
I will say this though, I'm glad we had this conversation. I hope we have many, many more. Anytime we can expose HBCUs, anytime we could give attention to some of these incredible universities, I'm all for it. I really am all for it. And I really hope that we get more and more passionate football fans to see why these institutions matter, why these programs matter. And I want to be able to continue to see that growth. I mean, obviously, we can talk about the HBCU Legacy Bowl, how that's been growing. We could talk about these incredible athletes. We've seen some success in the NFL with some of these students that you may not really get the attention because they're not at Alabama, they're not at Florida, they're not at Oregon, but yet there's incredible talent across the board. So anytime you and I can have these type of conversations, I'm all for it. If you ever want to just go into talking about the Power Five and what does that mean, the Big Two down the road, I'm all for it as well. So I'm grateful for the conversation. I want to come back on and support your growth and what you're trying to build there. And thank you for having me here. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no, thanks, David. Again, it all started with a guess, a careless guess on for a plug on one of my videos. It all started with that, but I look forward to having you on board in the future. I mean, I love talking college football with any and everyone. I try to respond to like every single tweet, because I just
Yep.
the feeling like being ignored, and trying to like have conversation. It's I try not to be that guy. But yeah, it's just it's an interesting time in college football for sure. So I'm always willing to talk so many topics, and like I can, I have a hard time focusing at work anyway, just doing this whole college ball writer thing. So, I find a way to discuss anything and any and everything, write it down first and then have it be a framework for a podcast. So
I love
I'm
it.
really
I love it. Thank you. And thank you. And by the way, have your listeners come and check out the weekly program we have on Twitter Spaces, HBCU Nightly. We do this
okay.
every
Yeah.
Wednesday. Typically we do it Wednesday and Fridays, but it's a blast. And you have incredible voices out there. There are incredible leaders that come on the program and they share their thoughts. People who do this full time are on here talking about what they've seen in the space. And I want to give them the attention that they deserve because they're the ones putting in the hard work. The Stephen Gaithers, these guys are doing it. You know, Tollies, the HBCU crew, their game day crew. They're incredible voices. So yeah, let's keep having this talk, Omar, and keep putting it out there, man. This is fascinating that you're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate it, and yeah, HBC Nightly is amazing. I just can't. I just always forget like whenever it's on. You know, I follow the gentleman who runs HBCU Nightly. I just always forget to tune into the space. You know, just I always get caught up out here in the in the mountain time zone. Um, but yeah, no, I totally agree. And again, like I'm not an HBCU grad, but it takes nothing to be a supporter of HBCUs
Yeah.
and just educate yourself on their important role in not just collegiate sports, but just American education and everything. So I just urge you that way. And like the best thing you can do, I didn't go to HBCU, but I listened to those who do and their experiences and learn from them. You know, learn from them and then learn how we can better serve these institutions, whether it means like supporting. I know if you're a season ticket holder of like an FBS school or even like a
Yeah.
like group of five school, like the paycheck game against the HBCU might be the one that you don't go and you try to sell off. Why not go to that game and support these great programs and everything. So that's just all I urge before I sign off. David, do you have anything else to add?
Nope. Looking forward to continuing these dialogues and conversations around the sport that we love. Obviously, today's focus has been around HBCUs, and I love talking about Pac-12. That's where I'm from, that part of the country. But yeah, anytime you want to have a conversation, bring it on. Anytime I can add some value to what you're doing, give me a holler. But let's keep talking about this sport that we love, and let's hope that it continues to grow.
Yeah. I mean, well said. I couldn't put it any better. And on that note, everyone, it's been great. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you made it this far. And until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul.